In 1999, Australia voted in a referendum that would shape the nation for decades. The question: should Australia ditch its monarchy and become a republic? They voted to keep the monarchy, with 6.4 million people voting for the Queen and 5.2 million people voting for the Republic. But was this win surprising? Monarchists argue there is no legitimate reason to make Australia a republic. They say this because in many ways, Australia is already what they call a crowned republic. But what does this mean? Well, firstly, Australia is what is called a constitutional monarch. This means Australia has Elizabeth II as a monarch, but because the Queen lives in the United Kingdom, she is represented by a Governor-General, who acts as the head of state in her place. The current Governor-General is Sir Peter Cosgrove, who replaced the first female Governor-General in 2014. So monarchists say this system, where the Governor-General is the head, is already very similar to the system used in most republics, where a president is appointed by the Parliament. But if so similar, then why not just get rid of the monarch, which represents an extra layer of our government that has little power and has little involvement. Whilst members of the royal family visit Australia regularly, the Queen herself was not visited since 2011, when she oversaw the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting. Unfortunately, the Australian Republic debate is dogged by misinformation from both sides of the argument. Monarchists think that if Australia became a republic, we would need to change our flag. This isn't true. We could keep the flag as a republic. We could even change the flag today if we wanted. They also argue that becoming a republic would be expensive. We would need to change our Queen since the Queen is on them. But we wouldn't. That'd still be legal tender. And they conveniently leave out the fact that the Queens change regularly with a new portrait of the Queen. And whilst many are starting to think it, unfortunately the Queen is probably not immortal. So the Queens and the Fiver would have to change anyway when Charles becomes king. It's also argued that acronyms and the like would need to change since many organisations have the word royal in them. But what letter does Republic start with? And Navy ships and other things that make reference to Her Majesty, like HMAS Canberra, or my local telephone exchange, Her Majesty Exchange Air, could just be changed to reflect the title of the Governor-General. Or they could just leave them. There is no rulebook for becoming a republic. Some might say that's the entire point, but Republicans are part of the misinformation problem too. They scaremonger, saying Australia is not independent, but it very much is. Australia became independent of the United Kingdom in 1942, when King George gave his royal assent to the Westminster Statute adoption in Australia. But even with this act, there was still confusion about whether the British could legislate in Australia. So in the 1980s, this was resolved by the adoption of two bills, the Australia Act Commonwealth, which was passed in Canberra, and the Australia Act United Kingdom, which was passed in London. The acts were identical and the adoption was simultaneous because both governments were still unsure which had the authority to pass the act. So they agreed to do it at the same time with the same words. So Australia's been fully independent since Prince William was about 4 years old. So if a Republic referendum was held today in Australia, what would happen? Well, polls and research showed that support for the monarchy has actually grown since the referendum. Research from the Australian Journal of Political Science shows that support for the monarchy was low during the 90s, which coincided with two high-profile royal scandals, the divorce of Prince Charles and Diana, and the Queen's refusal to address the Commonwealth on Diana's death, treating it instead as a small private matter. Another interesting factor is the age demographic. The age group with the highest support for the monarchy are those that are 70 years plus, followed surprisingly by millennials. The most Republican cohort are the baby boomers, who were young adults in 1975 when the monarchy intervened and sacked an Australian Prime Minister, a unique moment in Commonwealth history. So whilst a referendum to make Australia a republic would likely fail today, it's difficult to predict what future trends will be. Do you think in 50 years' time Australia will still have a king or queen?